everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Blue Collar DM, the channel dedicated to breaking down barriers for new players and dungeon masters alike. My name is Howard as always, and today we're actually going to talk about Roll20. We're going to go over a tutorial for players new to that platform. I've talked a lot and gone in depth on a lot of tutorials for Fantasy Grounds specifically, but this time we're going to talk about Roll20. Now, without further ado, let's get into it. Now, in order to present this tutorial on Roll20, we're actually going to go over to the computer and actually go over the interface in general within the platform, just so you guys can be familiar with it. We're also going to go into character creation for players, so that way they have an understanding how to access the compendium for 5th edition and how to bring that stuff into their character sheet. A lot of this stuff will also be cross-platform applicable for our Pathfinder or Starfinder, any of the different compendium information that's already uploaded within Roll20. A lot of that stuff you can drag and drop onto your character sheets, so stay tuned. It is going to be relevant for you guys. We're also going to go over how to pick a token and what that's going to be like, and how those tokens can actually make our experience a little bit better, especially when we're referring to hit points in a combat situation. And we'll talk about some just general macros that'll be very helpful when you're playing your game. If you guys want to skip around to any of those different sections, I'll leave different timestamps down in the description below. Also, if you have any questions about Roll20, Fantasy Grounds Unity, or Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, because that's the rule set I'm most familiar with, make sure you leave comments down in the comment section below. I'll be sure to answer those. We also have a really great community who will be more than willing, actually, to answer some of those questions as well. Also, make sure you subscribe, hit that notification bell for the channel so that you get notified when further Fantasy Grounds Unity, Roll20, Dungeons & Dragons, all kinds of different content, even some vlogs come out for the channel. Also, I have a Twitch account now. I actually am live streaming Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 9 o'clock here on YouTube, 9:30 on Twitch. Link down in the description below. Now, with all that being said, let's go over to the computer and let's look at Roll20. All right, so now let's talk about Roll20. So after you log in for the first time and after you join a campaign, when you log in after that, you're going to come to this page here, and it's going to show you what games you're actually playing in and what you've actually launched and stuff like that. I'm already in my Dragonborn campaign over here in this other tab, so we'll just close out of this one. And this is what you're going to see when you pull up Roll20 here for the first time as a new player. You're just going to see this. You're not going to have all these extra things over here quite yet, but basically this is what you're going to see. You're going to have this little toolbar over here. It's going to show that you're logged in. You're not going to have any of these at the bottom here, and these are actually called macros, and we'll talk about that in a second. But these are basically more like map specific tools. One of the ones that I do want to give you guys to have a good example of at least something that you can actually use these tools for, especially as a player, is this measure tool. So if you actually click on this measure tool, now we actually have the measure tool enabled. And if you actually click on a point, so let's say we're this character here, if we click on a point and we drag it, we can see how far away things are. So this character can move 30 feet in a round, so he can get about here in a round. So that's a good way to kind of measure out distances and stuff like that. You'll also see there's a dice roller here, so if you need to roll a dice, you can just easily just hit the roll 1d20 and it'll roll it in there for you. You can change your modifier here. You can change how many you roll, etc., etc. Easy enough. And then this is your pointer tool, so if you ever want to move anything around on the map, that's how you're going to do it. All right, so let's make a character. So let's get out of this, and we'll come back over here. We're going to make a character now. So we're going to come over here to this page. This one, you might not see it if you're playing as the player. You won't see this one right here. This is just the Assets tab. As a player, you'll have access to this tab right here, and we're going to add a character. Your DM will have to add one for you, but that's easy enough. And you can just put in here the name that you want to have and everything like that. And I'm going to just put it in my journal so my players don't see it. And it's going to be edited and controlled by me, and we're going to save the changes. There's actually, if we go back here, you can actually see you can put some bio information, some GM notes, but I'm not going to do that, so we're just going to save changes. And now we have this character, and we can come here into the character sheet. You can use the character mancer. I'm just going to edit the sheet directly because it's just the way that I like to do it, but to each their own. And we're not creating an NPC, so we're just making a player character here. So now we have our character sheet here. It's all pretty empty. We're actually going to make a fighter, I think, today, just so that way you guys can get a good handle on how this works. So first thing we're going to do is actually put in all of our stats. So we're going to make our strength a 15, and everything's going to auto-calculate out for you. Makes it really nice to see that. We'll do 14 in dexterity, 13 in constitution. We'll put our 12 in intelligence, our 10 in wisdom, and our 8 in charisma. Easy enough. So now let's pick our class, so we can actually just grab this fighter. You can click on it and you can actually see, and the way I know how to do this is if you come up here to this little eye icon. This will show you the compendium for whatever rule set you're playing in the game. I'm in 5th edition, but if it's Pathfinder, it'll be that. Your character sheet here will also be a little bit different. If you ever need to minimize something so you can have more room to kind of see, instead of having to just keep moving this around, you can actually double click it and it'll make this nice little tab here for you. We'll bring it back up here. So if you've never played Dungeons & Dragons before, you can actually read about what the fighter is. Roll20 comes pre-loaded in with the standard rules document and the SRD material. So you can actually have access to these different classes, which is really nice. Actually, it's just the SRD technically, but it has access to all that. And in order to put this onto our sheet, all we have to do is click, drag it over, and then release the mouse button, and it'll put it in there for us. Easy enough. It'll also calculate out what our saving throws are for us. It'll put our hit dice on here. It does all that. The only thing it doesn't do is our hit points, so we can actually do that right now. Actually, we're going to put in our race first before we do that. And there's a special reason why, and I'll show you that in a second. But even put in our proficiencies in armor and weapons and all that kind of stuff down here as well. So we come back to the eye here. Let's get rid of classes. And we want to pick our race. So if we actually come down here to races, it'll actually give you all the races in the game in the SRD. I'm just going to throw the human over here. And as we put the human in, it's going to put in our speed. It's going to raise, it actually doesn't raise our skills, so we do have to put that in here, unfortunately. I wish it did figure that out for us, but it just doesn't. As a human in Dungeons & Dragons, you get +1 to all your ability scores if you're just playing a base human. If you're playing a variant human, it's a little bit different, but we're not going to get into that today. So now our Constitution is a +2, so we can take that 2, add it to this D10, the maximum we can roll, and our max hit points are going to be 12. And that's how it's calculated in Dungeons & Dragons, but just to give you guys a kind of an idea of what's going to be able to be populated and what's not going to be able to be populated in this. And as a fighter, we have second wind at first level. We can actually click on that. It's going to actually put that in there for us, which is really, really good. And like I said, we have all of our armor proficiencies and stuff like that. The only thing it didn't pick for us when we put fighter over here is our skill proficiencies that belong over here. So we're actually going to come back to this eye. We can actually just click X on here, and instead of having to go through classes and then trying to find a fighter, we can just put fighter. It's going to auto search. You don't even have to hit enter, and then the fighter is going to pull up right here. And so now we can look at the fighter. We can see here, like I said, hit points at first level 10 plus our con mod. Our hit dice is 1d10. And then this is all our proficiencies, and we get to pick 2 skills. We can pick from acrobatics, animal handling. You can see all the rest of them there. I'm going to pick athletics, and I want this back, and perception, sure. And then I'm actually going to minimize my fighter because I'll need that to figure out what items I'm going to want later on down the line. And I think I'm actually going to do that right now. Oh, I need to pick a background. So unfortunately, in the SRD for backgrounds, you only get 1 choice, and that's Acolyte. So the Acolyte gives us proficiency in, there it is. It gives us proficiency in insight and religion. So I'm going to minimize that, throw it up here, because again, we're going to need to get items from that. But we can drag that over. It's going to add it from the compendium, and it's going to put all that information here. It doesn't look like it did anything. Actually, I don't know why this is negative temporary hit points on there. It doesn't look like it did anything, but you can see Shelter of the Faithful is here. It did add the common language. We technically get 1 more language, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly. We get 2 more languages, so we can actually add those down here. And I'll show you how to do that right now. So if we want to add a language, or if we need to add any other proficiencies, like say I have a proficiency in a tool or something like that, what we can do, at least for, to just say that we have proficiency, if we want to do the equations out for like, say a tool proficiency, that would go up here, and I'll show that in a second. But if we want to add another language, we just hit the little plus button, and it's going to bring this up, and we can actually change what it is that we're proficient in, whether it be a weapon, an armor, or other. And we'll just say we're proficient in the Elven language. Sure. It doesn't really change anything here, but if you click on here, it'll auto-populate, and then you can hit this little gear icon. It's going to minimize it for us. We'll do that one more time. We'll put in Dwarven. Click this button. It populates it for us. We can hit that minimize. There we go. If we wanted to add a tool proficiency, let's say if we were proficient in Thieves Tools, so I'll just put in here Thieves Tools. We'll say we're proficient in it. And then we'll say it's a dex skill. If we want to, we can actually have the software query to us every time that we want to roll this. But most of the time, in general, dexterity is going to be the modifier for it. Sometimes it's intelligence, depends on the situation. But I'm just going to put dexterity, and then I'm going to lock it in. So anytime I click this, it's going to appear over here in the chat, and it's going to show my rolls. It's going to roll at 2 d20s. The first one is the one you go with. The second one is actually if you were rolling at advantage or disadvantage, it automatically rolls it for you, but that just gives you that information right there. So now let's do our items. So items we're gonna have to look up. So let's pull up our fighter again, and it looks like we're gonna start with chainmail or leather armor, 20 arrows, and a longbow. I'm just gonna pick chainmail. So we're gonna come over to that eye again, and then we're gonna type in chainmail. It's gonna find it for us. We're gonna minimize our fighter here, and we're just gonna drag and drop it over to our items area. It's gonna add the chainmail in here, and it's gonna actually add it to our armor class and already calculate it out for us, which is really good. Bring up our fighter again. Martial weapon and a shield are 2 martial weapons. Let's pick a longsword. We'll look up longsword. There it is. Be careful because you can do this very easily. You can just grab longsword, and that's just gonna add the proficiency. You wanna make sure you're grabbing the item longsword, pulling it over. It'll add it there for you. It'll actually even show you, because long swords are versatile weapons, they can be used one-handed or two-handed. It's gonna throw that damage type in here, so that way you can actually click on this. It'll appear in the chat window. It'll tell you your bonus, whether or not you hit or not. If you hit, you just hit this long sword one-handed or whatever you rolled, and it'll tell you what damage you actually dealt. So pretty simple there. It's very, there's little tricks here and there. It's not always intuitive, but it works out pretty well. And then we get a light crossbow and 20 bolts or 2 hand axes. I need to put the shield in here first actually before I forget. So like I said, there's spells in here, and then we actually want the shield. We'll drag that over here, and as you can see, it added in there, and it actually added it to our armor class. Okay, light crossbow. Let's find that light crossbow. Light crossbow. Again, it's going to show us proficiencies first, but we want to grab the item. We're going to drag it over here. It added it in here for us. Now the light crossbow is also going to be up here as well, and you can see the bonus to hit and the damage rolls. If we look up bolt, crossbow bolts, draw it over. It's going to say we have 1, we actually have 20, so we can change that very easily by just going into this edit tab and hitting 20, and boom, there you go. Last thing we need is going to be a Dungeoneer's pack or an Explorer's pack. So there is no way to actually force the software to put it all in there for us, unfortunately. Like when we drag and drop it here, it's going to put it in there, but it's not going to tell you what it is unless you click this little info button. Actually, not even the info button. I apologize. You actually have to go back over here to the Dungeoneer's pack. It'll open it up eventually. And you can see here we get a backpack, a crowbar, a hammer, 10 python. You can see all that stuff there. But unfortunately, it won't put it in our inventory. We have to either look at it every time, or we can put it in here one at a time, but I don't want to waste our time here doing that, so we're just going to skip that for now. Now let's go back to our acolyte. We need a holy symbol, a prayer book, 5 sticks of incense, vestments, common clothes, and a pouch of gold pieces. So you can put the gold pieces in now. That's what these are right here, these little icons. For Dungeons & Dragons, we have gold pieces. We can put 5 gold pieces, 15 gold pieces there. Holy symbol. Now, you'll find there are certain items that are not included in the SRD. So if I put in symbol, it's only giving me the spell symbol. There is no such thing as a holy symbol in here. So what we're going to do is we're going to add our own custom item. So we're going to hit that plus button. It's going to add that in there. We can type in what we want. And we'll say it weighs 0.1 pounds. Sure. If we ever need to delete anything, whether it be on this list, any of the lists here, we can actually hit this lock button. It'll bring up these trash cans. You click on one of those trash cans, it'll be able to take it out, and then you just lock it back in so you don't delete it by accident again. So then let's bring it back to this acolyte. We need a prayer book or a prayer wheel. Again, prayer book doesn't exist in here, but we'll just put that in there ourselves. And a spell book weighs 30 pounds, so I'm going to say a prayer book weighs 3 pounds. And then we need incense. I think we can find incense. No, we cannot. So we're going to have to put in our incense here. We have 5 of them. We'll just say incense. And we'll say that weighs 0.01. 1 stick of incense doesn't weigh too much. Then we need vestments. I don't think that we have vestments in the SRD. Nope. So again, we're going to have to put in our vestments here. So that's one thing that I've noticed with Roll20 versus Fantasy Grounds and Fantasy Grounds Unity is that certain things are in the compendiums and other things aren't. So then we need common clothes. We'll bring that over here. And that's all we need for our items. So now our character is basically built, ready to play. The only thing it needs is a token. So let's talk about tokens. Now, one thing we need to do is actually decide what token we're going to use. And I'm going to do that off screen a little bit. I'm going to pick it. You won't see what I do, but I'm going to put it in here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose click to upload a picture from my art library. And like I said, you shouldn't see that, what I'm doing right now, unfortunately, just because you can't. There it is. All right, cool. So now we can save that change, and you can see this now. And then if we come back to our list of people here, you can see our new characters right here. If we drag him over to the map, it's going to drag that picture that we have of him onto the map, and it's going to occupy a 5-foot square, which is the size of what he is. If we click on this, and then we pull up this character sheet back up, we can actually go back into edit, and we're going to want to click this use selected token, because this is now our selected token. We threw that token of that picture onto the map. We'll say use selected token, and now that's going to be the default token. So if we save the changes there, come out of here, and then we're going to go into settings. And you're going to see all these different things here. You can actually see, you can actually have it show your character's name. So if I click that thing there, it's going to show the character's name. If I go back in here and I want to show, I want everyone to be able to see the different bars on top of my screen. I'm probably only going to pick, let's actually pick just bar number 3, because that's the one that's going to be my HP. That's the only one I really care for my players to see. So we can actually change the colors of the bars. So if you actually come back here, you'll see these 3 dots here that are blank. We're going to fill those in. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to pick different items to actually tell the software, hey, this is what I want you to put in here. So for this first bar, I want it to be my movement speed. So if we actually come down to speed all the way down here, it'll take me a little while to get there. So speed, if I click on it, it's going to grab it from the character sheet and put it in there for me. So now if I save my changes, you can see the green thing is filled in, this little green dot, and it tells me how far I move in one round. So next I want to put my AC in bar number 2, same thing, it throws my AC up there, which we can actually look at again from our character sheet was 18, it's correlated here now. And bar number 3, I want it to be my HP. It's very tricky sometimes, you have to make sure you don't go past, there it is, HP. So I have 12 out of 12 HP at this moment. If I actually go back into my character sheet, and if I change this to 11, it'll actually change my HP that I currently have to 11. And then if I actually heal my character, back up 1 point, it'll do that as well. The other thing you can do is you can actually click on this item, and if you take damage, let's say you take 5 points of damage, you can hit -5, hit enter, it's going to do that calculation. You can see that because I showed that bar, my little health bar went down a little bit. And then if I go back into my character sheet, it's going to show that I have 7 hit points. Same thing works in reverse. So if I come in here and I say +5, it'll heal me for 5. So just little things that you can play around with the tokens, and so that way you can remind yourself and the dungeon master and anybody else how much HP you have, how far you can move it around, and also what your AC is. So that way you're not constantly asking, hey, what's this person's AC? Or if you forget, what's my AC? It's right there. All right, so now let's talk about macros. So macros are going to be really important, or it can just be really helpful actually to make your game flow a little bit nicer. So there will be times if you're playing, especially a spellcaster, let's say you're playing someone who is a wizard that casts Fireball a lot, but you don't always cast at level 3. Let's say you upcast it, and you need to have some more D6s than standard spells would allow you to do. So if we go back into here into our compendium, and if I look up Fireball, it will think, and then it'll see that Fireball's in here. If I click on it, you can see here that Fireball does 1d6, or does 8d6 fire damage on a failed save, or half as much on a successful one. Let's say if I cast it at 4th level and I need to add an extra d6. If I just say I'm going to cast Fireball from my character sheet, it's going to roll the 8d6, but then I'm going to have to roll an extra one. It's going to be kind of annoying and complicated. So what you can do is you can use a macro to do that. So I have one down here that allows me to click on it. It tells me how many dice. It's going to ask me how many dice do I want to put. I'm going to say 9. Do I have a modifier in this roll? No, I don't. So I'll leave it at 0. And then it's going to roll it for me, and it's going to tell me, hey, I rolled 24 on those 9d6, which actually is pretty bad. But in this scenario, like now we don't have to actually come over and put in Fireball and then come over here and then find the d6 and roll it again. Like we can actually just use this little macro. And what this macro is, I'll show you. If you click on this button here, this little 3 lines with 3 dots, it'll show you all the macros that I have currently in here. If you want to add one, all you have to do is hit add here. And if you click on the macro that I have here, this is actually the macro that I have. Anytime I click on this button down here that I've told it to put in my little bottom bar, it's going to put this equation that's here into the chat window, and it's going to ask me how many dice I want to roll, and that's why this question mark here is before these brackets that are over here. And then same thing with the modifier, the question mark before these brackets. I will put in the description what these macros look like fully typed out, so that way you can use them yourself. We'll click cancel. And then I'm also going to be using a macro to talk to my characters. So say if I want to talk to a specific character, like say if I want to talk to this character Zuli, I can click on it and I can say whatever I want for YouTube and laughs. Enter. Now it's going to whisper that message specifically to if my friend, whose name is Greg, was actually in this game, it would actually type it out to him. And if you want to see that macro, we can actually come back here, do this macro, click on Zuli, and it's going to say, whisper to the player character, and then it's going to say that question mark with the brackets that's going to prompt me what's my message going to be, and this is the text that's going to come up in that box. And again, I will put in the description below this macro, so that way you can, if you ever need to speak to a specific player, if you're a DM, or even if you're a player character and you want to talk in whisper to the DM or the GM or whatever game you're running, that's the kind of macro that you're going to use in your game. So this is basically going to end our little discussion here right now of Roll20, this little beginner's tutorial. We put in a little bit of extra like advanced topics like these macros for you guys, just because I wanted you guys to kind of find different ways to make your game a little bit more streamlined, so you're not wasting time trying to figure out how the interface works necessarily. You can actually just have a macro that'll roll those dice for you. If you need to roll a D100, it'll roll it for you. You don't have to actually go in and try and find it, and it just throws it in there right there. So with that being said, we're actually going to get off the computer and let's wrap up our discussion. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is going to end this tutorial video for players new to the platform of Roll20. There's more information. I'll have future videos on that stuff if you want some more detailed information. If you made it to the end of this video, make sure you give it a like. It gives me a lot of great feedback that you like what you're seeing on the channel. You want to see more of this. Also, make sure you subscribe. Hit that notification bell for the channel, because there'll be more information coming out on Roll20, Fantasy Grounds Unity, Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. There will actually be some vlogs on the channel about the kind of different nitty-gritty stuff that goes into this video creation, but also the kind of stuff that goes into me prepping for sessions. A lot of great stuff. We'll have that on the channel as well. I'm going to be streaming now Monday, Wednesday, Friday on Twitch and YouTube, starting at 9 o'clock on YouTube, 9:30 on Twitch. Link for the Twitch channel down in the description below. I hope you guys learned a little bit about Roll20 and how it can be helpful for you as a player new to the platform. And until next time, I'll see y'all soon.